2 months ago, I repotted my entire Anthurium collection, and I did something risky. I tried a brand new substrate with every single one of my plants, which isn't necessarily a smart thing, because usually when I try out something new, I want to try it on one plant first, assess how it works, and then move on to other plants. But you know, I love to live on the edge. And in today's video, we are going to look at these plants and their root health to assess whether or not the big repot was a success. And while we're here, might as well just take care of some cosmetic aspects, and also gonna water them all. So yeah, just a little day to check in on my anthuriums. Hey everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As I mentioned in the intro, it has been 2 months since I repotted my entire Anthurium collection, and spoiler alert, it's going quite well. I suppose if it wasn't, I would be sitting here surrounded by ugliness, but I've actually seen some nice growth on most of my anthuriums. Not all of them, but most of them have had some sort of growth. And luckily, I also like to use see-through pots, so we're in a really good position to actually spy on the root health, because I suppose that is really what we are interested in today, because I used a brand new substrate. Now, I didn't just use a brand new substrate, I'm also pretty rough when it comes to my repotting. I'm not super gentle with my plants, and specifically given it was a repot going into spring, so I know that the plants will be growing in really good conditions going forward. I felt like I can be a little rougher with these plants and do some resets, do some cutting of ugly leaves, and so on. And looking at the comment section of that video, people were definitely surprised at how rough I am with my plants at times. And I've kind of always been like that. I've always treated my plants fairly rough. I mean, you probably know me also for shaking my plants and so on, and I've never really noticed them minding it at all. Like, I suppose I know when to be gentle with my plants depending on how small they are and so on, but I think sometimes we are projecting. These are not newborn children. They are plants, and in nature they're being treated quite rough as well. There can be storms, heavy rains, strong winds, animals jumping on them, sitting on them, whatnot, So I think sometimes we are projecting a little bit, and we are being more careful than we absolutely have to. But at the end of the day, each to their own. Let's just quickly look at what happened 2 months ago, so we are all on the same page, and then we're going to look at each of these plants one by one, and we're assessing their health. Now, I have a huge bucket of aeroid mix over here that I prepared, and I have tried I'm going to try something new with this aeroid mix. There's a lot of Australian tree fern fiber. Let me bring it a bit closer to you. Here we go. It's a new product that Tim from Grow Vertical is stocking, and he said it's a waste product coming out of Tasmania. Apparently this is a byproduct of what they're doing anyway. So there's no deforestation purposely for this product, but rather taking the product and then making the best use of it, right? So I thought, okay, let's give this a shot, because it is much more cost effective than the New Zealand tree fern fiber that I've tried before, and I really had good results with tree fern fiber previous, but it looks very different. It's going to be interesting to see how this one goes, but technically it should have really good water retention, which these anthuriums like, right? So I don't need to worry about them drying out, but at the same time it has good aeration, and of course I have, as always, my bark, pumice, perlite, cocoa chips in there as well. Now it looks more dense than my normal chunky aeroid mix. You can't see as many air pockets. You probably can't see anything from how far away you are. I'm sure we'll see it over the course of the video. But it feels very light. I think that's because the tree fern fiber is actually just really, really light in weight. So yeah, I'm curious to see. I might need to compact that a little bit just to give it structure. There we go. Going to be interesting to see how this one goes. And yes, I'm experimenting with my whole collection all at once. YOLO! Why not? The longer I've been doing this hobby for, and the more content I am with my collection, the less need, I feel, to actually buy more plants and own plants. I can just look at other people's plants. I don't need to own every plant to appreciate it. Yes, of course, some of these plants I would also love to have at home and look at and decorate my house with, but I already have amazing plants and I'm really grateful for them. And you know, I'm running out of space. Like, adding more plants isn't necessarily gonna make that problem go away. It's just gonna make the problem worse, right? So I just put a little topping on all of those, and let's park them back on the side over here. Oh my god, I think it's the tree fern fiber that gets into my noise. Keep going with the ones I can reach. This is also crazy rubbish hybrid. First of all, so many ugly leaves. A lot of my plants have definitely suffered a bit over winter. Should I do it? Should I just... Yeah, you know what? Oh my god, you guys gonna hate me, but I'm gonna cut all of them because they're all ugly. Honestly, the deeper I get into this repot, the dumber I think of an idea it was to just try this new substrate with every single one of them, but... Oh well... Do you think this is too big? Oh, might as well, right? What is going on over here? Wow, you are crazy. That's also... Oh, I forgot to cut off some of the ugly leaves here. I'm so excited to cut off all the ugly leaves because they're all on like a big shelf and the ugly leaves are spreading everywhere and taking up so much space that it is annoying me. Oh, it feels so good. I feel like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Hey darling, oh my god, don't jump around, please. You're so sweet, my darling. So sweet. Meow. Oh no, not enough. Little layer of airwood mix. Now let's talk a little bit more about how I care for these anthuriums. I mean, throughout the video I kind of addressed a little bit of it already, but basically I'm not super consistent with where my anthuriums live. Some are in the greenhouse over summer, some are indoors for the whole year, some are upstairs in my bedroom, just supported by a mother grow light, some are in my Ikea cabinet. Do I have some growing just in natural? Well, I suppose the ones in the greenhouse just live, they just get natural light. And they move in there. Which also means that in summer they can easily be exposed to 35, 38, 39. I think it's gone up to 40 degrees in that greenhouse. But I have misters, so it's constantly humid. Whereas inside, some of these might be exposed to, you know, like down to 16, 17 degrees at nighttime. Some of them I had in a more chunky airwood mix like that I used to make. Then I started using a bit of tree fern fiber in it because I know that they like a bit more water retention. Most of them have a moss. What's next? Are you next? Because you're annoying me a little bit. But before. This ugly leaf has been bothering me and it looks like little baby was naughty and had a little bite of them, huh? This one's ugly too and this one's ugly too. Worries about this. Nah, that's not happening, eh? Okay, now this one, oh my god, you're gonna hate me. Now this one is living in my attic, like, because I don't want to look at it because it's too ugly, and because it lives up there, it also gets neglected because I'm hardly up there, only up there to do laundry sometimes. So I'm gonna try something and I think I'm gonna completely cut this back because I don't know where to put this plant with that spread. And realistically, at the moment, I just don't enjoy looking at this plant. I'll keep the newest leaf. It's ugly, but it exists. So at least we're not going full bald. But I also can't wait to eventually chop this off. You know, I feel so much lighter now that I cut this off. Okay, let's see what we end up with. Number one, decent. I cut one more. I try to come a bit closer, but it's honestly, I can hardly see what I'm doing. Can you see this over here? I'm just gonna cut. Yeah. You can see this compressed moss in here. That's not what I want. Beautiful. It's giving me like a it's giving me club kit. And that is it. Let's do a little video in a couple of months' time on my anthuriums and see how they coped with my rough repot. Oh my god, I have substrate on my face already, it's itchy. Okay, now technically it wasn't like a brand new substrate, right? It is just a new iteration of my aeroid mix. My aeroid mix changes all the time. It depends on what sort of ingredients I have available, and I had a whole lot of tree fern fiber available that Tim from Grow Vertical sent me. So I figured, why not make a more water retentive aeroid mix compared to my normal super chunky one. The super chunky one I love to use with my moss poles because I watered the moss pole itself quite heavily, and I just want it to be super chunky so it doesn't retain too much moisture in the pot, because the pot will always retain much more moisture than the moss pole due to it being in plastic rather than mesh, so way less airflow in the pot, and also the vertical exposure of the moss pole. Now with my anthuriums, only the queen is actually on a pole, so all of them are just in pots. So I thought, you know, anthuriums really don't want to dry out. I think they like to be kept on the more moist / wet. I don't like to use the word wet, but you know what I mean. Let's call it moist. They like to be kept on the moist side. So why not use a more water retentive mix? That way I actually also reduce my watering needs, or the frequency in which I need to water. Plus I had just heaps of the tree fern fiber available, and I like to make use of the ingredients that I've got instead of going out of my way to buy more. Before we look at all of these in a little bit more detail, there is actually a bad news story, like a bad news story. Let me show you something. Help! Fungus gnats. I successfully avoided fungus gnats for the last 4 years, and that's because I make my own aeroid mix and it is soilless. So I never use store-bought potting soils that come in bags, because they are usually infested with gnats, and then once they're there, they have a good time spreading, specifically given I have so much moss poles. So I haven't really had to deal with fungus gnats in over 4 years because I've been so good at preventing fungus gnats in the first place. Literally the day, I can't make this stuff up, the day after I filmed that entire repot and repotted every single one of my anthuriums, Tim sent me a DM and was like, hey, heads up, make sure you bake the tree fern fiber, and I think you need to heat it up to 70 degrees to kill the larvae and or eggs, because the tree fern fiber wasn't treated yet, so I need to treat it myself before I use it. Well, I got that memo literally 24 hours too late. Did that stop me from using the same substrate with another 20 plants? No, it didn't. And now I'm learning my lesson, but that's okay. I don't want to talk too much more about fungus gnats today, because I'm actually filming a full video about me trying to fight the fungus gnats and tackling the issue, and I will share that with you once I have had success. But yeah, I suppose that's definitely a huge negative of having used so much of that substrate across various rooms of my house. I basically introduced fungus nets to my entire collection, and I wasn't even thinking about that at all when I decided to use the new substrate with everything, because I've used the tree fern fiber before, but different one. I used the New Zealand tree fern fiber, and apparently that has been treated. So usually the materials that I buy, to be honest, I never checked, I just assumed, but like the bark and the cocoa chips and so on, they sterilize it, I believe. So I think if you just heat it over 70 degrees Celsius, then it will kill any sort of egg larvae and whatever. And you know, then when I make my mix and I put all of the ingredients together, because everything was sterile in the first place, then you know, there is no fungus nets issues and so on, right? So now it being more water retentive doesn't help, because nets also really love a good water retentive mix. So anyway, I've been fighting the battle. Definitely nothing I wanted to do, but I suppose it's those sort of experiences that make me grow as a grower. So I try and see the positive. That is definitely a huge negative that I didn't consider, and I suppose that's our first learning for the day. If you use a brand new substrate, definitely don't go ahead and use it with everything. Use it with a couple of plants first in, you know, maybe one room, and assess if it works for the plants, but also assess whether or not you're potentially introducing fungus nets to your room or to your collection, right? And that can take, I think the cycle from egg to larvae to adult fungus net actually takes up to 3 weeks. So after I repotted it and Tim sent me the message, I didn't see anything for another 2 weeks. So I thought, oh, maybe, you know, maybe I got lucky. He personally has used it for over a year already and hasn't seen any fungus net issues, but he's using it outdoors and in a greenhouse, not in an indoor environment. Indoors, less airflow means everything stays more moist, meaning that these fungus nets have a much better time thriving. Right? So I'm also not blaming Tim for it. He did his due diligence and he didn't have any issues with it. So, you know, he gave me the heads up as soon as he found out. So, you know, it is what it is. It's just a sequence of unfortunate events, but I'll make the best out of it, and by the best I mean I'll make some content out of it, right? Yay! Thanks for the content idea, Tim. It's like with moving. I never want to move, but my moving vlogs always perform really well. So in hindsight, moving actually saves my business. Maybe I should move more often. Anyway, let's move on, because we haven't even looked at any of the plants yet, and I've been talking for a long time. So I'll put this back. I hate the sticky tapes because I'm worried they're gonna stick to the leaves and they rip the leaves. So let me put this somewhere safe, and then we can finally look at the roots. And alright, maybe I'll just sit here so we can take them out one by one, because it's getting messy. Let's start off with one that's not actually repotted. I did not repot this as part of the last video, but it has grown quite nicely. So this is a hybrid of Magnificum Forgetii crossed with my Queen. And this is its newest leaf. It's looking so beautiful. Really happy with this hybrid. Now it is actually due for a repot soon, and this moved out of the Ikea cabinet as a result of the last repotting action and so on. So it used to live in my Ikea cabinet. I've also built a new Anthurium shelf in the meantime, so I've got a little bit more space upstairs on my shelf. And look how incredibly happy this is. So this is still in my old substrate, and I think it might be a good comparison. I really hope there's not too much glare. We're right in a window. But it's a good comparison. If you look, apart from these super chunky roots, you can definitely see that this mix is much more chunky, right? There's more gaps in there. There's more perlite in there. It just doesn't look quite as dense. So the previous mix worked perfectly fine. It required more frequent watering because it wasn't holding all too much moisture. But yeah, this leaf, it grew this leaf after I moved it out of the Ikea cabinet. So I think just a testament to the actual setup, the grow light that I use upstairs, and the shelf. Like it's working really well. But such a gorgeous plant, that's why I wanted to really include it. Alright, I'll start parking them on the side because they're all gonna go outside for a shower today as well. Alrighty, next up, my Anthurium luxurians. Now this one was repotted in the new mix. Very, very root bound. I don't know if you can see this, so let's repot this. This is one of the latest additions to my Anthurium collection. So I just want to loosen up a tiny bit, but I also don't want to disturb the plant too much, especially while it is growing a brand new leaf up there. I don't want to undo all of this beautiful work. You can see how it's a climber, right? You can see it's climbing quite slowly, and there's some aerial roots over here that I would love to now make contact with a substrate. So I'm gonna pot this up a bit deeper. So I also want to loosen this up a bit so it's not already right at the bottom of the pot. I said I'm going to be gentle, and I'm like going pretty hard on this, am I not? Or other, let's say, like plant. Oh my god, I just ripped so many roots off just then. Let's stop. Oh my god, you can see the fungus gnats flying around. After the repot, I put it back in my Ikea cabinet, but very fast, like, outgrew the Ikea cabinet. It just gotten a bit too close to the grow light, and I was worried about it burning. And it's so beautiful, I really didn't want anything to happen to it. So it also moved out of the Ikea cabinet. So additional stress, not just a repot, but also changes in condition. And it's now also living on my Anthurium shelf upstairs, but it is growing a new leaf over here. So it is happy, and look at the roots. Yeah, I mean, you can see this really chunky root, and it's a perfect example of it coming out of the stem, then being funneled by the moss, like traveling across the moss all the way to the edge of the pot, and then funneled into the aeroid mix, right? So super, super chunky root over here. And then lots more smaller roots, another super chunky root over here. So all of the roots you can see pushing to the side of the pot, they've all grown over the last like 2 months, right? So very happy with that, and given these new chunky roots that are growing, I am pretty confident that the new leaf is also going to be huge. Yay! It's always hard to judge Anthurium leaves at the beginning because they come out so small, and then eventually something's happening. Alrighty. This one is Cineroy, oh my god, I still can't. I was confident I would get it right today, but I didn't. I'll put it on screen. Exact same scenario as with the luxurians, was in my Ikea cabinet, grew a little bit too large, now moved onto my Anthurium shelf upstairs, supported by a mother light, and was also repotted. As soon as they become too big, it gets a bit messy in there. Yeah, it's another really tree fern fiber heavy substrate to start off with, and see how nicely it just flakes out. Hardly any effort involved over here. I think with the luxurians earlier I left it a little too long. And we can see some roots, not quite as many. There's like a little one here. Yeah, that's actually about it. Just one little root, but it is growing a new leaf over here. So it's doing something, and it actually started pushing out like a little propagation of itself. Often I don't like when they start propagating themselves and sending out like a second shoot, right? It means that something is wrong with the OG growth point and the plant is activating a secondary one. But I can't actually see anything wrong with the growth point. It's still here. So let's just hope it's a good thing. It hasn't dropped any leaves or anything like that, so I think I'll just need to stay patient. Next up, my VGI, and I never really have good success with my VGI, and to be honest, nothing really changed. Alright, kind of a disappointing root system, but it is what it is, huh? This is the newest leaf. It is probably the biggest one it's ever grown, but I don't know, maybe somebody has an answer for me. What is it? Like, it always has these little cheeks here. See this? Like, it always has this fold. As soon as it's getting a little bit larger, so the last two that gotten a bit larger have this weird fold. Like here. And there was no mechanical damage when growing up or when unfurling. But anyway. It grew a new leaf, that's positive. This is probably the most leaves it ever had. This could be one of the biggest leaves as well. I've had a really terrible run with this plant over the last 4 years, and it grew from seed. But I bought a little tissue culture one to see if I'm maybe more successful the second time around. Now there's just a few really tiny roots. I hope you can see them because there's also quite a bit of condensation that's kind of blocking our view, but there's one right here, just right above my finger. There's some small ones here. There's a more chunky root starting to grow over here. Teeny tiny one pushing here, 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 like really small one. Easily getting confused with a piece of perlite. But yeah, this one I suppose is the best one, the most visible one. Is it? The closer I come to the camera, the closer I get to the window, the more glare. But trust me, there is a root. So that's also good news because I suppose with this plant I've had really poor success. And I think part of it is also because of the poor root health it's had the whole time. So hopefully this more water retentive mix is actually going to change something for this plant. That would be really nice actually. Next up we've got a Clarinervium hybrid, no, Crystallinum hybrid. Still healthy roots, looks good. So I don't know why the leaves are looking so bloody sad. But I know what I'm gonna do with sad leaves. You know what? You as well. We're gonna, given there's a new one coming, we're gonna focus all of our energy on that. But I'm running low on substrate, so I wanna put this back into a smaller pot. This is a new leaf that it unfurled. Unfortunately had one little blemish over here that then caused the whole leaf to deform a little bit, but I think it has just absolutely stunning colors and veining. And already pushing out another leaf over here. So we are really happy about that. And by we, I mean mainly me. I don't think Brad cares. Brad, do you care? No. Alrighty, over here, I can't really, like I can see some roots, but they all look to be more like the old roots that it already came with. I can't really see any, see a little bit there. There's no way you will be able to pick that up on camera. But I can't really see any root, oh no, down here. This one you can definitely see on camera. Yay. So there is new root growth. Nothing, oh, and up here, oh my god, look at me. There's one sticking out over here. So this is one of these roots that, you know, came out of the stem and then started going towards the edge of the pot, and now I'm just going to use the moss to actually push this down because I want this root to grow into the substrate instead. So good news, within another week or so I reckon that root would have expanded quite significantly. I'm not concerned because purely based on it growing another leaf, it must be quite happy. Anthurium Clarinervium. I think this has had root rot. I think. Let's see. Yeah, it smells a bit like root rot. Actually, no, it doesn't smell too bad. Yeah, okay. It had root rot. Anyway, this is not as bad as I actually expected. This is kind of okay. Now, what I could also do is, I'll bring you a bit closer. That should be good visible. You can really see these more healthy roots at the top over here. They were all grown in the moss because I did a good job keeping the roots in the moss moist or consistently moist. Whereas I think all of the ones that were in the pot over here, they went through a few cycles of just drying out too much. And this is a result of that, had a little bit of rot. I'm actually thinking I might cut this over here and let the top just grow nicely, and then I'll propagate the bottom. Then I have two, one for the greenhouse, one for indoors. To be honest, I didn't actually want to make any propagations because, well, I feel like I have too many plants already. I want to have more quality rather than quantity. Hey, I could just put them together, huh? Let's maybe do that. And all of these old pots, I'm just going to give them a good rinse, especially if I know that there was a bit of root rot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to park this on the side, let the cuts callus over a little bit, and then I'll just pot them back together. But then I have two plants in here to create a lusher look. Let's have a look over here. There is a new root coming out here. Can you see that? So that's obviously going to find the moss really soon, and then hopefully the moss is going to funnel it into the air white mix. You can see some roots here. Sorry, there's again a little bit of condensation here, but there's a new root here. There's a new root down here where my finger is. Yeah. Let's use this opportunity to also peel off all the stickers. That's it. Oh well, not that many roots, but we're getting there, no? And I think it grew this leaf. Cute. Look, it hasn't grown well over the last 3 years, so I'm not expecting a repot to magically change that straight away. Right? At the end of the day, the conditions set the potential and the conditions haven't actually changed. So maybe, but I'm happy. It's a good plant that just sits there, doesn't take up too much space. Happy days. Magnificum hybrid over here. I think when I did my Anthurium shelf video, that's the one where I by accident snapped the leaf. So it could have had a really beautiful new leaf, but I snapped it. No! No! Oh. However, it is almost like maybe a blessing in disguise. It looks like it is now activating 2 growth points. There's a new leaf unfurling here, and this also looks like a leaf, not like inflow. So maybe me snapping the active growth point will work in my favor. I don't know. However, hang on, sticker time. Look at this. Chunky root over here. Chunky root over here, very chunky root over here and here, super chunky roots here and here and here and here and here, and more chunky roots over here. I mean, I think specifically this should definitely pick up on the camera. Yeah, there you go. So lots and lots of really chunky roots in here, so it is definitely happy. And yeah, really can't complain. Now I just gotta make up for my accident when I ripped the leaf, and give me a new one, please. Thank you. Next one. What do we have here? Which one are you? Are you a crazy rubbish? I think it's a crazy rubbish. Yes. You can definitely see how this one is a climber. So I could give this a pull, but really what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pot this a little bit deeper into the pot. So this would be too small, right? I'm just going to pot this a bit deeper like this, and then I don't need to give it a pull. Too many pulls already as it is. Okay, it's pushing out a new leaf over here, and that actually looks fairly chunky. Like that could be a good one. From a roots perspective, you can definitely see some new root growth right in this area over here. They're not quite as chunky as the ones from the plant before. You can definitely see these are the older roots that are they just ended up like that as part of the repot, and then the newer roots looking a little bit whiter. Are there any chunkier roots? Look at the top over here, the very, very top. I don't know if that's visible. Right there. Kind of right where? Right here, right under the lip. So again, those are roots that are coming from the stem. They're going through the moss over here and now just finding the edge of the pot, and then hopefully travel down. They seem to be traveling more sideways, but I'm going to push it down so it goes down, because there's obviously more room down here. Another root here, and I can see lots of smaller roots over here as well. Hard to see with the condensation, but definitely roots. Definitely roots. Let's maybe get this one out of the way. This is my puppy Dresslery or puppy Hoffmannia. Anyway, one of those hybrids. I'll put it on screen. This ugly leaf has been bothering me, and it looks like little baby was naughty and had a little bite of them, huh? This one's ugly too, and this one's ugly too. Worries about this. Nah, that's not happening, eh? I have no fear of this not recovering. Okay, this is the only other pot I've got up here, and I can't be asked to go back down into the garage again. It will be a pain to find a pot for this one, but I think I'll do it. What is this? 30 centimeters. Might as well, huh? I am filming a pollination journey with this plant, but I pollinated it with itself because it has such beautiful black leaves. I want more of it. Now, because it's not in a see-through pot, we can't really assess whether or not there's any sort of root health, which is unfortunate because it's a large plant, right? So this one could have really chunky roots, but there is a decent sized leaf coming out here. Can you see that? I mean, it's teeny tiny now, but you know how tiny anthurium leaves start off with. This has a lot of potential. And also, it grew this entire inflow since then. I mean, look how long, where is it? I don't think it's even in frame. Look how long this inflow is. So it definitely has energy, otherwise it wouldn't be growing such a large inflow and a new leaf. And, well, not just energy, but also water. So there must be roots. But, yeah, I hate when I don't have to see through pots to spy on the roots. I just find it so rewarding to see the root growth. It's like twice as exciting. You don't just get to look at leaves, you get to look at leaves and roots, right? Anyway, let's park this on the side again. Alrighty, I was pretty rough with this crazy rubbish. Oh god, I think it's the tree fern fiber that gets into my noise. Keep going with the ones I can reach. This is also crazy rubbish hybrid. First of all, so many ugly leaves. A lot of my plants have definitely suffered a bit over winter. Should I do it? Should I just, yeah, you know what? Oh my god, you guys gonna hate me, but I'm gonna cut all of them because they're all ugly. Honestly, the deeper I get into this repot, the dumber I think of an idea it was to just try this new substrate with every single one of them, but oh well. I kept one leaf. It's not the prettiest leaf I've ever grown, but it's a leaf. Oh well. Most importantly, it is now growing another leaf. New leaf over here again, just judging by the thickness of the petiole, this could be quite a nice large leaf, right? I mean, with anthuriums you got to be patient. It can take up to like a month for it to actually really expand and reach its full length. But also another inflow over here, which I don't want. So we'll cut this. Now, I don't know if I'm actually, I don't know if I'm actually saving any energy here by cutting the inflow. I mean, common sense would kind of mean that, well, that inflow, I cut it when it was this tall, so I'm obviously saving the energy the plant would put into growing the inflow larger, like the other one, right? So obviously, the less time I give the inflow to grow, the more energy I should be saving, but some also say that it can just encourage more inflows. I don't know. I think it also depends on if we're talking about monsteras, anthuriums, alocasias and so on, but with anthuriums they flower so prolifically, and I find it, like once they mature, I find that each leaf grows one inflow out of the petiole, so I don't think it will encourage more inflows because it already had the one. Anyway, I always chop it off unless I have active plans to pollinate this plant, which I very rarely do, to be honest, because I already have enough anthuriums. But every now and then it's fun to just go through the journey again, so right now I'm doing it with that one I showed you earlier. Ah, nice. Okay, but over here again you see root health, some roots here, some roots there. Hard to see with the reflection or the glare, but there is a root here and you can really see little secondary roots coming off that. So I think the original root was already there, but the secondary roots coming off of that root, they are all new. And over here again you can really see these chunky roots again. Obviously the newest roots will be the chunkiest because that's the most mature growth, right? So the newer roots are always really chunky because look how chunky the stem is now. Chunky stem is going to grow a chunky root. That root is, and that root does not dry out because of the moss pile on top and then is funneled in here. So that's really what I'm after. I'm really after all of these plants growing new chunky roots and they will expand really quickly. Next one, this is a Clarinervium hybrid though with a wide sinus. Let's cut this off because you're ugly. And here we can see a tiny new leaf. Look at this. That is cute. If you compare this one to the other one, you can tell that the other one will be much larger, right? This one will be quite small, to be expected, given that the original leaves are quite small. Wow, I did a terrible job at peeling off these stickers, huh? Alright, I can see some root growth over here. Oh my god, I hope I'm not going to look at this footage and you can't see any of the roots. Some root growth over here. Yeah. I don't know. Don't focus on my face. Focus on the plant. Focus on here. But nothing super special on here for now. But oh well. We'll stay patient. At least it's growing a new leaf. This is another one of... Is it? Hang on. Is that... Yeah. Oh, I think... It could be a crazy rubbish, or it could be one of the hybrids I showed you earlier. The first one, the Queen Magnificum. Yes, it's the Magnificum Forgetii crossed with my Queen. Has a more closed sinus, but sometimes they rip. Anyway, let's use this leaf because it's pretty. Anyway, there's also a new leaf coming over here. Very excited about that because again, it has quite a thick petiole, so I'm confident that it's going to grow quite nice and largish. Oh, and look at that chunky root that's hiding behind the sticker. Very nice. I like that. Hopefully it's gonna focus. Don't focus. Lots and lots of chunky roots here actually, down here as well. Look towards the bottom of the pot. Over here you can definitely see some of these roots are the old roots, but you can see how the old roots you can see how the old roots are growing new secondary roots in this sort of pocket, right? And that pocket would just be really nice humid air. Over here as well. Oh, another really chunky one up here. Another chunky one up here. Awesome. Okay, all of those plants are on my Anthurium shelf upstairs. That's actually crazy when I bring them out one by one. Feels like it's never ending, wow? So it's quite busy up there. Maybe I need another shelf. Anyway, moving on to some of the plants that are in my Ikea cabinet, and there's only two Anthurium left in my Ikea cabinet because the other ones outgrew it. This is a Delta Force. This is the Delta Force, that's it. That's the Delta Force. So I just gave it a fresh pot, 10 centimeters with my new aeroid mix, and see how it goes. First, really nice leaf over here. And look at this super chunky root that is growing here and now pushing. Can you see this is coming out right here? And look at the other side. Look at this super chunky root. For this tiny plant, that root is absolutely ginormous. And another one here, and another one here, and another one here, and another one here. I know this is really hard to see because first of all I watered this yesterday, plus there's algae in the pot, so it's even harder to see it, but I am so impressed by the root growth of this plant in my Ikea cabinet. Specifically considering that there's fungus gnat issues. Fungus gnat larvae feed on roots. So smaller plants like this one would be more vulnerable to actual damage from the fungus gnats. But it looks like at this stage there's not going to be any damage from the fungus gnats. It's just an annoyance to me. So very, very happy with that. And those sort of really chunky thick roots is really what's gonna make this plant explode over the next few months. Really, really excited for that one. And then my Anthurium that one, it's in the same mix, it's in the same Ikea cabinet. Also watered it yesterday with algae buildup, so the pot is, you can't see much in the pot. But surprisingly, there are actually no roots pushing towards the edge of the pot. However, it has given me this leaf, which is the biggest one it's ever had. I mean, this is a teeny tiny tissue culture plant, so yeah. The leaf is giving me hope, but I haven't seen any roots. So quite crazy to see the difference in roots between these two, even though they get the same conditions, same everything, right? So yeah, I suppose while I always say anthuriums are all the same, they're not actually all the same, right? Alright, the next section of plants comes from my outdoor greenhouse, and I mainly put like stumps there because well, they weren't looking that nice, and yeah, why not? Now over here there's 3 stumps in there, 1, 2 and 3. Definitely a rescue case. This one I left in the greenhouse. I don't know why. It just, I forgot this one when I took them all inside. I forgot this one, and it really didn't like it. I then eventually discovered it, but this one would have lots of root rot. I know that because it was getting really cold in that greenhouse, like 6-7 degrees, which isn't good, and too wet. So wet and cold, not a good combination. But let's see how bad it is, and let's see what I can do about it. It's actually not that bad. There's some roots here. I mean, I'm more or less gently pulling on them. This is a Magnificum hybrid I have also grown from seed, so it's a little sad because it's also the only seed that I have left, I believe, or the only plant from that batch of seeds. So after I discovered it, I just kind of put it upstairs in my little rescue section, and I kind of did nothing for it over winter. So I suppose it's not really going to recover until I give it some fresh substrate. So that's what we're doing now. And I really don't mind growing anthuriums from stumps. Like, look at this little stump over here. It's already sprouting a new little shoot. It works really well. I actually, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure I've seen people also just like purposely just cut back all of their anthuriums at the beginning of the growing season to just encourage new leaf growth rather than having the plant hold on to old leaves. Leaves come and go, right? Roots is really what we need to look out for. And that's where I failed this plant. I did not give it conditions and or substrate that would prevent root rot. Even though my substrate is so chunky, I still sometimes get root rot because ultimately it's bacteria and or fungal. And I think sometimes my substrate is so chunky that I let it dry out too much, and then re-wetting is what's causing this, the root rot. I'm just saying we're different people with different priorities, with different time availabilities. I'm going to squeeze these all into a teeny tiny pot because why not? Less chances of root rot in a tiny pot usually. Now, number 1 has given me 2 shoots. Number 2 has given me 2 shoots as well, and number 3 is currently giving me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 growth points. I mean, it's only grown 1 leaf over here so far, but just judging by the growth points, and I hope you can see all of them, judging by all of the growth points in here at the moment, will be good, I hope. Now this has crazy condensation because it came from outdoors, and outdoors is much warmer than in here, so it's going to be really hard to see anything, but I can't see any roots in here, unfortunately. Next one, and those 2 belong together. That was probably the roughest repot of all of them. Okay, now this one, oh my god, you're gonna hate me. This was my first anthurium, and it's probably my most hated at the moment. Look how much it spreads and look how ugly it is, and also look at all of the holes that this newest leaf has gotten. Now this one is living in my attic, like because I don't want to look at it because it's too ugly, and because it lives up there it also gets neglected because I'm hardly up there, only up there to do laundry sometimes. So I'm gonna try something, and I think I'm gonna completely cut this back because I don't know where to put this plant with that spread. And realistically, at the moment, I just don't enjoy looking at this plant. I'll keep the newest leaf. It's ugly, but it exists. So At least we're not going full bold. But I also can't wait to eventually chop this off. Yeah. However, oh my god, it actually has very healthy roots. However, this has been my first Anthurium I've ever bought, and it was actually really expensive back in the days. Anthuriums were really expensive 4 years ago over here in Australia. Or 3 years, whatever. They've come down in price a lot because so many growers are now making their own hybrids and so on. Oh wow, this is getting messy. Anyway, where am I going with this? It was my first Anthurium, and it was the Anthurium that I used to make my crazy rubbish hybrids. Like, well, it's a hybrid with itself, but it's a hybrid in itself already, so you know what I mean. So, I should have really used that repotting mat, which I've put together and then never used. So, it has sentimental value, but for me, plants also need to look good. I want to look at nice looking plants. I don't want to look at something that bothers me. And this plant was bothering me. I didn't know where to display it. It took up the space that 3 other plants could fill instead. So I'm like, well, if I need to choose, I'd rather have 3 plants than just one ugly one. Wow, this is super root bound. But given I'm already doing fundamental resets over here, I'm also not going to be too gentle. And look, we're gonna find out. So it looks like with the last repot, I just took the plant, put it in the bigger pot and filled in the gaps because it's very compacted in the middle. Sounds like something I would do. Look at the roots. Look like delicious noodles, huh? Oh my god, what have I done? So, I'm gonna go ahead, you can see the stem now, I'm gonna go ahead and cut the stem. I'm gonna cut right here. Okay, let's see what we end up with. Number 1, decent. I cut one more. I try to come a bit closer, but it's honestly, I can hardly see what I'm doing. Can you see this over here? I'm just gonna cut. Yeah. You can see this compressed moss in here. That's not what I want. Beautiful. It's giving me like a... it's giving me club kit. And I've decided to maybe put this into 2 pots. Especially in the root department, can't complain at all, huh? Yes, this is already quite root bound, but that's okay. I'm happy for this plant to be root bound and focus on some leaf growth, huh? Because you have nothing to show for, nothing. Oh my god, what happened here? Did that get even worse today? I think I ripped apart, huh? Oh well, oopsie. And basically the 2 bottom parts with heaps of roots I put in here. Chunk number 1 with a new growth point over here. Chunk number 2 also with a new growth point here. Just 1 each. It was a bit disappointing, eh? Again, crazy condensation because the plant comes from outside, so the potting mix is a bit warmer. It's like 30 degrees outside today. So when I put it in here, lots of condensation. There is like 1 root that I can hardly see with my eye, so absolutely no chance for you, but there is 1. But with this plant, it had heaps of roots already, right? So I wouldn't necessarily expect this plant to focus on growing more roots because it had heaps of roots but no leaves, right? Because I just cut these chunky stems. So what I would expect over here is for the plant to give me a shoot, then give me leaves, and then from the new nodes that the plant has grown, new roots will find their way into the moss and then into the potting mix. I wouldn't expect the old root system to expand further because it has plenty of roots for absolutely nothing to support with those roots, right? This one I absolutely destroyed as part of the repot. It was a new leaf that was unfurling, and halfway through watering I was like, oh my god, did I rip this whole leaf in half? It had a few holes before, but then I also completely ripped it. Anyway, It definitely will, we will say goodbye very soon to this leaf, but I kind of, like, it could have been so nice. Look at the color and the veining, right? Anyway, it is growing a new shoot over here. Yep, stem feels firm, so I don't think there's any rot issues. Roots. I don't think you can see this, but maybe there's something pushing here. I don't know if you can see that. A lot of condensation again because it came from the outside world. Some roots pushing up against here. So definitely some roots there, but that was hard to see. I could hardly see it with my eyes. So no chance for you. And last one from the greenhouse. This was not originally in the greenhouse. It moved back. So it was actually originally in the greenhouse over summer, and then it moved inside over winter. It didn't do anything over winter. It just didn't die. Yay. And then it had these two leaves when I did the last repot, and I kind of damaged both of them. As well as like with the Anthurium shelf rebuilding, and because I'm also dealing with fungus gnats, I'm taking them out of the shelf and onto the balcony and thoroughly watering them with like a solution. But again, like, don't want to spoil the other video, do I? Anyway, basically I have been moving this plant around so much over the last few months, right? And every time I move, I'm hurting this plant, or I'm somewhat scratching this plant or whatever, because it spreads so far. Look, there's a leaf here, there's a leaf there, it spreads in all directions. It's hard to move this plant without causing any damage, specifically when the leaves are really young and vulnerable. So that's how I managed to rip it in so many spots. If you want your anthuriums to look really nice, try and not move them. But yeah. Anyway, not much to say over here because unfortunately also not in a see-through pot. I think unfortunately this is going to be a little bit too big for my normal 20 centimeters, so I'm gonna put this in a 25, which unfortunately I do not have in see-through. This entire bucket of aeroid mix might not be enough. Crazy. These big pots take so much medium. But it is growing a new shoot over here, so that's positive. But I really wanted to have like a couple of new nice leaves because I'm so sick of all of these old ones. Talking about being sick of them, I think it's time to say goodbye to some of these because it's just taking up too much space, and they're like hooks, you know. I move them around and this petiole leaf thing hooks into another petiole, and then it's like domino day, and like all of the anthuriums just like bloop 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 start falling, and that's how leaf damage happens. So now we're not, sorry baby, I'm squeezing in. Now we're not fully done. We've got the queen left. This is the newest leaf, and it was unfurling and everything was going well, and then suddenly it stopped unfurling properly. See how it's kind of curled? Like it should be more like this. Maybe I can like bend it. Is that better now? Yeah, but it's kind of like, see how it's like curved? Actually, that's much better. It was more curled up like a taco before, and it's not dehydrated. But I, by accident, ripped it over here as well, and the rip is just getting bigger. So I put like a little piece of sticky tape here to hopefully stop it from ripping further. See how we go. It could have been such a beautiful leaf, but then there was a little bit of damage, again, by having to move it around too much. So next one that unfurls, I'm not gonna move this at all. But look how thick, like it's so wide. I don't understand why it can't just, see how these are really flat kind of? Why is this so curled up? I don't know. But what I do know is that these two are not doing it for me. So I'm almost thinking I'm gonna chop these two leaves off. I know that kind of really reduces the leaves that it has, and the other two that are left are far from perfect. I don't know, I just hate looking at them, and I could cut the edge again, but every time I cut the edge, it's just gonna make it worse. So I think I'm gonna cut the whole, yeah, I think I'm gonna cut these two, sorry. Now these two are kind of hooked together by some twine. Okay, now I'm gonna redo the way that this plant sits on here. So let's manage this one first. Not perfect, but a little bit better, huh? Takes up less space. Honestly, in my shelf, I don't want old leaves to take up nice light for new leaves to then not fully thrive, if that makes sense. But we haven't looked at the roots yet. This also was not repotted because it didn't need it. But actually, I think soonish it might need one. Look at all of these roots over here. Wow. Alrighty, I'll put all of these plants outside. I'll spray them down just with water, and then I will also thoroughly water the ones that need it. But it is actually really hot out there. It's really sunny, so I think I need to probably wait another hour or so until I've got a little bit more shade in my backyard to do that. So I'll let you go. You don't need to wait for that. You've seen me water my plants before. It won't look any different today. Today was really all about... Why am I hovering, huh? Sorry, Bradley. Today was really more about assessing the root health. So in a nutshell, the substrate is actually a success when it comes to the plants and whether the plants like the substrate or not. However, I completely forgot about the fact that a new substrate could also introduce pests. Now fungus gnats are probably the best pest to introduce because the only damage it could cause would be the larvae causing root damage, but from what we've seen there wasn't all too much root damage to be worried about, right? So they're really at this stage just an annoyance to me, but of course I don't want it to turn into a big infestation where it will actually harm my plants. So I'm working on, you know, getting on top of it, and hopefully I will get on top of it pretty quickly, and then hopefully I can also share my advice with you on you know, what I did to counteract all of it and what I will do to prevent this from happening again. Anyway, that was totally my fault, and yeah, we learned from it that when introducing something new to your environment, if it's a new substrate, if it's just one new component to your substrate, if it's maybe something like a moss pole, right? Like you could have fungus, you could introduce fungus gnats to your place via the moss poles if the eggs are in the moss that you're using, right? So whenever you introduce, even when it comes to pest treatments, fertilizers, if you're doing anything new to your plants that you haven't done before, it is always a recommendation to go slow. Don't go so hard like I do, otherwise you'll end up with the consequences, and yeah, I hope the consequences end up making a good piece of content for all of us. And then I think the second learning is that, you know what, despite the fact that I was so rough with my repots, that I chopped ugly leaves off very liberally, none of them is suffering. There wasn't actually a single casualty as a result of this whole repot. Some have definitely recovered faster than others, but all of them seem to definitely have recovered from the repot. Every single one has at least shown signs of new leaves or new inflows or root growth or all of the above. So all of them have given me some sort of sign that the repot was successful and the plant is now living its best life again. Yeah, I suppose I won't have to repot them for probably another year or so. I'll probably do the next repot next year in spring. So sweet. Anyway, thanks for coming along. If you watched the whole video, leave a little noodle emoji in the comment section to represent the nice chunky noodle looking like roots that anthuriums grow. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, you were so boring today. You're just sleepy. Bye. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I'm in trouble.